This interview with Pete Buffalohead of the Ponca Nation was intentionally done at a memorial location. We apologize for any wind and or traffic noise that you will hear.
My name is Pete Buffalohead. I'm a Ponca enrolled member. I'm also a half Kiowa. I know both sides extremely well due to my grandparents and being the way I was raised in our traditions and our culture. I'm a tribal spiritual advisor for the Ponca tribe. So if anything crazy or anything goofy that happens, they're the ones that call me, and I have to figure out what's going on. Spiritually, supernaturally, basically I'm the one they call. So when it hits the fan paranormal, I'm the one they call. If it's Bigfoots or anything other spiritual beings, I'm the one they call. So
if they don't know what it is?
If they don't know what it is. And then they'll call me and I'll come out and figure out what they're dealing with, or if it's something new, or if it's something that's always been here. So
all right.
That's pretty much me in a nutshell.
So Pete, what are your personal and your tribal beliefs on what Dogman is?
Dogmen are relatively new to us within the last 7 years, probably 8 years. We knew of them, but they really never came through our area, through this area, until just within the last 5 years they've been seen around here. They fear them, and I told them and visited with the elders, stay away from them if they see them, or if they're outside and they see them, get back in the house. They won't mess with you if you're in the house. They just kind of go around the house.
Kind of a wild card, aren't they?
Yeah, that's something not to mess with. Actually, there are two types. You have dog men and you have dog people.
What's the difference?
The friendliness.
Attitude.
The dog people are recent, but basically they've been around just as long as the dog men have, but they're just now being seen. I got a friend of mine up in Ohio that's been studying them recently, and she and her husband have had interesting run-ins with both types. The dog people are friendlier, the dog men aren't. Dog men can get aggressive. They know what guns are. They know what they are. Mm-hmm. So they tend to see one, they'll stay away from an individual with a gun. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not intended, or they're not intent to run across. So how would I put it? It's just stay away from it. But there are run-ins that do happen, and if there are run-ins, just back off and go back the same way you came. Don't approach them. Don't look at them. You know, just get the heck out of the area. That's the only thing that I could advise.
You think they're flesh and blood?
They're flesh and blood, very flesh and blood. If they can leave a print, they're flesh and blood.
There you go.
And that's what a lot of people, I've seen a print the size of a styrofoam dessert dish, if not bigger.
Right.
And that's just the hind leg, the hind foot.
Right.
And if you're seeing a print that big, can you imagine how big it really is?
You know, I had a guy reach out to me last year, and he said that his next door neighbor found a canine print south of Tonkawa that was, or not Tonkawa, Conawa, excuse me, which is from a lot further south.
Yeah.
That was 9 inches along the bank of a creek. There was a trackway. And I guess the guy took a couple of pictures and showed his next door neighbor. And then I guess his neighbor started looking into it. But by the time he got in touch with me, he went back to contact his neighbor, and his neighbor had already deleted it or changed phones or something and lost them. But he had some photos of a 9-inch. I mean,
oh, I believe you. I believe you. That
would be huge.
Yeah, like the one that I saw was an easy 6.5 footer. Easy 6.5.
Yeah.
And that's on 2 legs. Imagine them on all 4s, because we thought that was a cow. At first, we didn't think that it was a cow. My friend was the first one who saw it, and he said he saw it pacing back and forth on the right side. Next thing you know, it jumped completely over the dirt road. And I'm just like, are you sure you saw what you saw? And he was like, yes, I know what I saw. And then as we got closer to it, where it jumped over, that's when we looked to the left of us and we could actually see it on 2 legs walking off. And that's not a Sasquatch because the ears were on top of its head, not on the side of its head. And it was walking away, just grabbing branches and breaking them as it was walking away.
He was letting you know.
Yeah, he knew that we were there. He knew. But he wasn't going to mess with us, and we weren't going to mess with him. I mean, I had 2 buck knives on me, and my friend had a 22. That ain't going to do jack against this thing.
No.
And we knew that, and we're just like, get the kids out of here now. And they got past us, and we stood there until they got past us and got up to the car. Then we got to the edge, and then we ran up the top of the hill because we didn't know what it was going to do. And that was our first run-in, and that was about 7 years ago, 8 years ago. And
is that close to here?
Yeah, maybe about 2 miles down the road, 2.5 miles down the road.
Wow.
Yeah, in the timberline.
And
yeah.
What time of day was that?
About 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock.
In the afternoon?
In the afternoon.
Jeez.
They're out.
The one I saw was in broad daylight too. And I mean, at first I saw mine from the road, you know. But I mean, at first, I mean, it took me a couple of seconds just to process how big that thing really was.
Mm-hmm.
And I never saw it stand up, but you know, they're big and they're beefy and they're thick and wide.
Yes,
you know,
they are.
Their chest is impressive.
They're built like bodybuilders.
Yeah, kinda.
Yeah.
I always tell people that when they start pinning me down on what the one that I saw looked like, I always tell them, you know how some pit bulls have like the real muscled up chest? Imagine that times about 10. And that's kind of, you know.
Yeah, no joke. They are. They're beefy. They're big. They're small at the waist. The best way I could describe it is you've seen a giant timber wolf. You've seen how big they are. But imagine it Hollywood. Now, the neck is thicker, the arms and shoulders are wider, and it tapers off into a very, very small V to where their waist is, but their legs are just as muscular as their upper body. And imagine that on 2 legs. And that is...
Though I never saw the one stand up. It ran away on all 4s. It was kind of funny, too, because when it ran, it lowered its rear, kind of, or maybe it just appeared that because the chest with the front end was so much bigger, but it seemed like it lowered its rear end like some bird dogs that I've seen.
Yeah.
And whenever it was running, it was kicking its back legs out very dramatically, you know, and so it didn't run like a normal dog. I've seen a few German short-haired pointers that would run like that, but most dogs don't run like that. So that tells me there's probably a different bone structure.
Could be. So I agree with you on that one.
So how often do people report seeing these dogmen in this
Right
area?
about now. It's always in October.
Really?
They're passing through in October. This is going to sound crazy, but I meditate a lot.
Yep.
And in meditation, I had one approach me in meditation.
Really?
And he was big, older, a lot older. He was silver, but he had a black mask across his face, a natural black mask. And goddamn, I want to say his name was Silverbane, but it was Silver something. And he talked to me and told me to tell my people we're coming through. Stay in your homes this month. Do not go outside at night. And I'm sitting here trying to think in meditation, am I seeing what I'm seeing? Or this is a part of a meditation or something, you know? And it was a little weird experience for me, but that was the warning I got from him. And like I said, imagine a Hollywood werewolf, but not a werewolf. Werewolves look fierce and ugly. This looked like a giant timber wolf. I mean, they're always talking about the, God dang it, what the heck do you call those dogs? The ones that are supposed to have, dire wolf.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Well, dire wolves weren't as big as this either.
Well, but these were big. This one was big, and he was on 2 legs talking to me. And
But he wasn't all...
No, he wasn't.
The one I saw looked borderline majestic.
Yes, I would say majestic. And this one, just like the one I saw, the ooh and ah at what he looked like was the same as in my meditation. But like I said, he was completely silver. So he was older. And I was just told to tell everyone to stay inside. So I did as he instructed, and I got with all my seniors at the senior center, and I explained what happened, what came to visit me, and they listened to me, and they did as I was instructed, or as I instructed them. They went to all their family members, was calling everybody, stay inside, especially the ones in the country, they're coming through. And I just left it at that.
Interesting. So, do you think that this, coming through this area during this time, do you think that's a part of a routine that they do?
It is. It's been the last 7 or 8 years. During October, they come through. So they're migrating. That's the best I could get out of it. They're migrating. They're heading north.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, it's probably healthier for them to move around.
yeah, it could be. But like I said, it's always October. That's when my reports start coming in.
Huh.
And they do move kind of northeast. Along the river, they'll cut across the open plain area and cross across the river, and then they'll come up through this area or follow this area, and they'll head east, northeast.
Do they travel in family units?
The ones that I've seen so far, no. I know there are family units, but I've always seen the ones that I've seen are solo.
So the one that I saw, I got the impression that it was alone.
Yeah. To my understanding, basically, to what I was taught was they were scouts for
Really?
Bigfoots. And they're the ones that find the pathways least humanized, I would say, with homes and everything. They try to find the least the safest trail
Right.
to go through.
Yeah.
And that happens to be going through the Oto Reservation, our reservation, and following it up through the river, and then cutting across the river and heading out.
Going north into Kansas.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, do you think the Sasquatch people, do you think they go with them? Or
Some do, some don't. The ones in my area here stay here year round. I know there are sasses that migrate. Some that do come from north come south, and the ones that from south go north. I think it's due to the abundance of deer, because deer season's open right now, and there's going to be a lot of deer that's going to be harvested this year, and it kind of cuts into their food chain. So some will stay around, and some will head north. But like I said, my family units around here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. I got 4 family units in the area. I take that back. 6 units, family units, and 2 rogues. I call them 2 solos, not rogues.
Of Sasquatch.
Of Sasquatches.
And do they have any dogmen that reside with them, you would
No,
say?
the dogmen just passed through here. They don't reside here.
Okay.
Because if they did, I would have seen more than just the one that I saw some years back.
Yeah. Well, and I was telling you earlier about the Odo lady that reached out to me, and she said that like 10 years ago she had that encounter just south of here, south of Red Rock on the highway.
Oh yeah.
And my encounter was in I want to say 2007 or 2008, and that was further south and west over by Covington.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because Covington is quite a ways away from a river. So, I mean, we've got Skeleton Creek that runs through there, but there's not a water source. Do you think they stick close to water sources?
I
Like
think
Sasquatch?
Sasquatches do stick. Well, then again, there are natural springs throughout all of Oklahoma. If they know where all those natural springs are, they can stay away from the rivers, but the majority of them stick to the rivers. So it's a 50-50 thing.
They manage their resources.
Yes, they do.
Right.
And if they know where springs are at, that's on their marker. They have a certain trail they follow that's on their set course. They know where to go.
Yeah, sometimes I think that, that would be a really great place to spend a summer in the heat. be hanging out close to the spring.
Yeah, you can, but it depends on who you are and what nationality you are, or what tribe you belong to. Ponkas stay away from springs. They'll get the water what is needed from back in the day, but nowadays, even though the springs are still there, they stay away from it. Due to little people. Little people love staying around springs.
Really?
Oh yeah, especially around here.
We had a spring on my family farm growing up, still there. But I used to like to go down there and hang out in the summertime because there was a little valley and the springs came out of the side, and the whole valley would just be cooler because of that cold spring water coming out than it was. And so I always thought that would be a good place to hang out for them too. But if the little people have their mark on it, how do you think the little people interact with these dogman creatures?
I don't think they do at all. They stay away from them. I know they interact with Sasquatches. I know that.
Trade medicine?
Yes.
So, speaking of the Bigfoot, when these dogmen come through this time of year, they stay here. Do you think that they have anything to fear, or maybe the young ones have anything to fear?
I don't know.
Or is their medicine too strong?
To my understanding and what I've been told, they do work together sometimes, or sometimes they'll keep each other's company, or it ends up in a fight. And I've been in an area where there was a massive fight.
Any idea what it happened over?
I don't know. I couldn't say, but what I saw was complete destruction of one area. I mean, trees busted in half. I mean,
blood?
I didn't see any blood, but I saw a lot of uprooted trees, trees that were broken in half. I mean, we're talking good-sized trees, young trees, old trees. It looked like a battlefield, is what it looked like.
Where was this at?
In my timbers. About.
How long ago was that?
God, man, that was a while back, a way while back. Within 6-7 years, maybe a little longer than that.
Kind of makes you wonder what they end up fighting about.
Yeah.
You know, if they interact like say different tribes used to interact years ago, it kind of makes sense. Eventually, something's going to come up.
Yeah.
And there's going to be some kind of dispute. Let me ask you this: some of the people I've heard from the Cherokee Nation, they believe that, and I'm not trying to get you to argue a point, but they believe that they're actually related. Have you, in your experience, have you seen anything like that, or from your experience, are they completely separate?
In our stories, they lived amongst us and we lived amongst them. We're taking this way back. Actually, we migrated down from New York up in Canada area. We came down, crossed over, then dropped down. And we ended up in the St. Louis area. Then we actually disbanded from the St. Louis area because our tribe was so enormous at that time. That's why we had the Dagihaws, we got the Quapaws, we got the Caws, we got the Ponkas, we got the Omahas, and we got, what's that last tribe? Osages? Did I say Osages in the first round?
No.
Okay, Osages. There's 5 of us. At one time, we were one tribe. But at St. Louis is when we kind of dispersed and made smaller groups.
Right.
And in our stories, like I said, they lived amongst us and we lived amongst them. They had their teepees that were made for them and they had their dwellings that were made for us. So it was an inter-exchange in our stories of living together and how to survive, being taught different things. In that, that was our relationship with them. As far as I got with that, as far as I could take it back, there are other ones that I did visit, and they heard the same thing, and they were told the same thing. But that's far as it went as a relationship. We probably did call each other brothers and sisters at one time. That's the old system. That's the old way of thinking. Nowadays, it's not that way anymore. It's monster, human. Beast, human.
Right.
And that's us being colonized and telling us how to live our way in today's society. As for back then, it wasn't that way. It was brother, sister, or grandpa, grandma, or uncle, or auntie. That was the system back then. Nowadays, the system is still here somewhat, but not as much. That part of the culture is actually dying out. And there are some ones that are my age that still understand that and know that relationship. And the younger generation, I would say 5 years underneath me, don't have that relationship anymore. See what I'm saying?
Yeah. So, do you think that, I know you said that some of them migrate, these dogman creatures. Do you think that some of them stay in one location?
I think some do.
It's just an individual choice.
Yeah, it's an individual choice depending on food, water, just like any person or any being. A friend of mine was telling me a story that he overheard at a casino between these old farmers. And the old farmer says to the other farmer, I just saw something crazy at my house last night. So my friend's sitting there kind of eavesdropping on the whole conversation. And he goes, well, what happened? The older farmer told the other farmer that. And he goes, I come home last night, and I'm driving up my driveway, and I get by the barn, I'm backing into my spot, getting ready to go in the house, and when I look back up there, I see, this is the part that sounds crazy, a werewolf walk out of my barn, shut the door, and walk around the back side of it. And this other farmer was like, are you joking? He goes, no, I saw that last night. And it scared me, so I ran inside the house, grabbed my gun, and I just sat by the front, made sure all the windows were locked, all the doors were locked. And he didn't tell his wife what he saw until the next morning. So he went out there the next morning with his rifle, and he said, I did find giant canine prints where I saw it walk out of the barn.
And that was here local, huh?
Yeah, that was on the other side near Tonkawa. This is probably
that
7 years
river
ago.
goes back up that way,
Yep.
straight through the Tonkawa.
This story was told to me by my friend about 7 years ago, and that's what caught his attention. He goes, the farmer that had the encounter was telling the other farmer. The farmer was like, well, you sure it wasn't a Bigfoot? And he goes, no, this wasn't a Bigfoot. This had a big long snout on its ears, were up on the top of its head like a wolf. That's why I say a werewolf. And He goes, that's a new one. And he goes, but after that point, the farmer was just like, he just left it alone. He goes, I ain't saying you're the only person I've told and what I saw. And he's afraid of being ridiculed. He's afraid of being made fun of.
Were they white or?
They're white. They're non-native farmers. They lived in
just
Tonkawa.
He just saw something he didn't have. The only reference he had for it was Hollywood. Huh?
Yeah, a werewolf. And he walked on his hind legs just like the way a dog would, but he goes, it was huge and it was jet black.
I wonder what it was doing in his barn.
I don't know. I kind of thought the same thing. What was he doing in the barn? Is there something in there or what?
Sad thing is, you pin people down and you try to start asking questions, and sometimes they shut down.
Yeah. Like I said, you know it and I know it. Ridicule, being made fun of.
I've been there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of new to the whole public awareness thing because it's just last couple of years they found out what I do at work. So,
ooh.
Yeah.
How'd they take it?
I get a little bit of rib poking, but I think about 3/4 of them just don't know what to think about it. So.
But like I said, we're taught they don't exist. Ghosts don't exist. Bigfoots don't exist. Dogmen don't exist. Any cryptid creature out there does not exist. This is how we're conditioned. This is what we're taught from kindergarten all the way through high school and sometimes in college. This is what we're taught. And if your mindset is that way, it doesn't exist until you run into it. And when you run into it, that's when everything changes. Everything you were taught from grade school on up to college is a lie now.
Right. Yeah, and the church is not. The church denies it too. I mean, they'll put the demon stamp on just about anything.
Everything is considered a demon.
Yeah. And that's where I think a lot of these people, they won't talk about it because, other people, church people, will interpret it as, as demonic possession, like you're doing something you're not supposed to be doing, and you're bringing just because you ran into this. That Odo lady that I was telling you, she interpreted it that way at first, and she thought that it might have had something to do with the fact that she was coming home from the casino, and that she shouldn't have been gambling.
Yeah.
And that was her thing, but she said nothing else ever happened. And so she kind of, put that process, thought process behind her.
Yeah.
But, when people run into these things, they don't have anybody to talk to. She was scared to reach out to, her people too, because she was unaware that there was any, of course this was 10 years ago, but she was unaware of the presence of these things in her area with her, talking to her tribal people. She wasn't aware of anything like that. And so she was very skeptical about what to do and where to go for help,
Yeah.
I hear her. When I saw mine, I had no idea what I was looking at, and I didn't even feel comfortable talking to my brother flat out about it. I kind of downplayed the size of the thing and everything. So, but that's kind of how these things go. You take anybody that's older than me, like I'm 50. If you take anybody that's older than me, they grew up in a generation where if you talked about this kind of stuff, they had nut houses for you.
Oh yeah.
And so nobody talked about this stuff because I think a lot of older people, especially, they lived in mortal fear of being committed to one of these institutions.
I agree with that too. But if you look at the native side of things, it was boarding schools. Boarding schools were Christian schools or Catholic schools, whatever it was. You were conditioned to leave your old traditions and your old ways behind. And the old saying was, kill the native, keep the man. That was their way of thinking, and it's hard to do. And the boarding schools, if you look at it, is recent, within the last 100 years.
Right.
And the last boarding school that did close down, actual boarding school that did close down, was Chilocco.
Right.
It was north of us. Another boarding school that's still operating and still going to this day is Haskell Indian College. That's been there for over 125 years. Now it's a full-blown 4-year college now.
Good for them.
And they were taught, in the schools, these don't exist. Your traditions, your ways, and your cultures don't exist anymore.
Right.
You live the way the white man does. You don't believe in that. You do as the white man has taught you. That's the conditioning. And then those kids grow up. They have kids. They're taught the same exact thing they were taught in boarding school. And
think of all that's been lost.
Yes, all that's been lost, educational-wise and everything, for Native Americans. But that was the way the government was trying to condition the Native American to forget traditions, our culture, and colonize like everybody else has been colonized. To run that way. And it doesn't work that way, because now you start seeing things that you were taught that don't exist. Why is this living here, and why did I see this? And I'm not the only one that sees this.
Yeah.
And
your great-grandparents knew all about it.
Oh, they knew all about it,
But here we are.
Here we are trying to figure it out now. And if they left us alone, we would still know what's going on and how to handle these situations.
Even the white people, it's a similar thing, although I don't think it was dramatic. They had all their old world beliefs that they brought over.
Mm-hmm.
My people, we had the leprechauns, and the Irish and Scottish people. They had all their specific, different beliefs, and they brought them over with us, but they just faded away.
No, not with the natives. They're still here. You're talking about your leprechauns. I've ran into some of them. Our elders, they talked about when they were kids, they were going home and they saw a little lantern on the side of the dirt road crossing in front of them. And it was a little person that did have a suit on and did have a hat on, a top hat similar to a leprechaun. And they watched it walk across in front of them. it just ignored them and it walked across in front of them. And they remembered that as kids. And they were telling me the stories, and another story would pop up. We seen the same thing, but we saw it over here. But the hair was dark, not red, dark. And I'm like, what? You know, and I started listening to their stories, and everybody in the seniors started, okay, then we ran across this. And I'm just like, shit, leprechauns do exist then, you know, and I just left it at that.
I read in a book that the different little people, not to shift gears too much, but the different little people, they have their own tribes, and that they have a bond to the tribes of big people that live in that particular area. They dress the same, they use the same language a lot of times, and they oftentimes they would decorate themselves very similar with like jewelry or hairdressing and stuff like that. And I can't help but wonder, are these leprechauns the same thing? Because I know that the Cherokee believe that the little people came with them on the Trail of Tears.
They probably did.
But they did the little people from Ireland come with the Irish immigrants that were basically brought here as slaves?
Well,
you know.
You think about the story that I told you earlier about my mom cutting down the Indian perfume.
Yeah.
And there was one trapped inside there in the bag, and the bag's kicking around like there is something in the bag, and it's laying in the corner of my kitchen, propped up against the door. And I'm like, what did you bring? And she goes, there's nothing in there except Indian perfume. I said, no, you brought something with you. And the bag is kicking back and forth like something's trying to get out. I take it outside, take everything out of it, and I don't see nothing until I dump it upside down. When I dump it upside down, I hear something hit the ground, but I can't see it. Then I heard tick, 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 something running away. And I said, oh, I know what you are. Then I put all the perfume back in there and made sure there was nothing else in there, and took it back into the house. And I told my mom about it, and my mom was, I'll be damned, I guess I did trap one in there. And
what do you think, it was asleep?
It was probably asleep in the tall.
Good place to take them out.
It was. I mean, it's a nice thick area. It's a cool area. And it probably just got trapped in there and didn't know what was going on when it got cut down and got thrown in the bag, and it went across from Kansas all the way to Oklahoma. He's in a new area, probably pissed off now, you know.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be pretty tough. I mean, all of a sudden you're uprooted.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, they probably have their ways.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, but like I said,
I doubt they walk the whole way.
Like you said, there are different tribes, there are different clans. Our little people here still dress the old ways. They have leggings on, dresses, breastplates. They still dress in the old way. But then again, a friend of mine saw one that wasn't dressed that way. He had a kind of a tore up little t-shirt on he was wearing, and saw him and watched him run across our powwow grounds from one tree to another tree and ran straight into the tree. And he saw that, and he couldn't believe what he just saw, but he kept it to himself. He didn't tell anybody until a couple of years later. Then after that, I heard the story, so I had to go ask him, and he told me what he saw. And he said he was an ugly little thing. Messy, nappy hair, greasy face, dirty t-shirt on. It looked like he had pants that were on, like tall pants. And he came out of this tree, and he didn't think that I saw him. And I actually just watched him run across the little field, across the road, then ran into a tree. Disappeared into that tree. So I get up and go over and check that tree over. There's no entrances, no way, no holes, no nothing. He just ran into the tree and disappeared. And I'm just like, are you for real? He goes, yeah.
I wonder what his affiliation was.
I don't know.
Kind of makes you wonder. Maybe he was freelance.
Could have been. I don't know, but there are different types of little people. Our little people over here are about 12 inches tall, but if you go over to the Tonkawas, their little people are the size of infants. But if you go to Pawnees, the Pawnees down south, theirs are about yay tall, 3 foot tall.
So I saw a YouTube video a couple years ago where they were talking about little people, and they were under the impression that the little people could change their height at will.
I don't know about that one. I've just told what we've seen and what I've seen, and I've never known them to change heights. Like I said, I think
they don't need to.
They don't need. Yeah, I agree with you on that one. But the Otos, they're the same as our belief. They're 12 inches tall. And
now, Has anybody, to the best of your knowledge, ever spoken with one of the little people?
Yeah. My brother did before he passed away. He wasn't my brother, but he's a lot older than me. And he called me little brother. And I called him big brother. And that was our relationship.
Right.
Totally two different families, but that's how we were.
What did the conversation?
His conversations, they were comical. He remembers hearing something in his house one night, and he was asleep in bed, and his wife's sleeping too, and he just remembers hearing whispering. And he's like, it's coming from the ground. He said underneath his bed. So he didn't say nothing. He just kept quiet. And he reached over and grabbed his flashlight, slowly leaned under and turned the flashlight on. He says there were 3 little men, Indian men, standing there. And my brother did talk Ponca, and they were talking Ponca, so he understood what they were saying. And so he was conversing with them. He said there's something outside big and ugly, and it's bad, and it's trying to kill them. So
what do you think it was?
He didn't know. So my brother looks out the window. He doesn't see anything. He says, it's nothing out here. He goes, they said, it's out there. Trust us. It's out there. You can't see it. And he was like, okay, well, just stay in here. And,
hold on here. What does a little person have to fear?
There are things, how would I say? There are things in this world older than us that are still here. This is leading off into a different subject, but there are elementals. Elementals are the old deities of the old world, the old gods. And it could have been an elemental.
Wow.
That's the only thing that I could think they could fear is an elemental.
I was always, from what I've learned, the little people, their medicine's strong.
Oh yeah, but if they fear something, that's telling you there's something out there a little bit badder than
that got my attention.
Yeah.
Man, they'd be more than welcome to hang out with me as long as.
That's what happened. He ended up, when the sun was coming up, it was clear for them to leave. So he had kite string. So he had a little nail by his window, so he tied it up there, and he had knots going through it. And he goes, "You guys need to leave. Go ahead and use this." And they did use it. And he goes, "I didn't see him for a couple days, and maybe 2 days later, they came back. And they came back. This time, it wasn't out of fear. They came back to visit. So my big brother, he says, I got bologna sandwiches, and I had a beer cap, so I just popped out sandwiches for him. And he had little bitty glasses, his doll glasses for his granddaughters, and he filled them full of water. And he just leaves them there in the tray. And he goes, "This is for you guys," and he goes back to sleep. And next morning he would wake up, the water would be gone, and at least half sandwiches would be there.
Wow.
So he'd take them out and he'd bury them the next morning. And this routine went on for like 6 months with him. And he had a good relationship with them. And they would tell him stories. And so he would turn around and relate them to me. And I'm just like, "Are you serious?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I said that for them to fear something, I said, "That's scary." He goes, "Hell yes, that's scary. Because they're supposed to be the baddest little creatures on the face of this earth.
Right.
Medicine-wise, spiritual-wise. But for them to fear something?" And I'm just like, "Well, there are things out there older than them." And he goes, "Yeah, but around here?" I said, "Brother, you don't know what lurks in the dark out here."
Yeah.
And he was just like, "True, very true." And I'm just like, if they're scared of something, then that should put you on high alert as well. And he goes, "I was on high alert, because if they're afraid of something, then what the hell's outside?" And he just left it at that,
Yeah. I mean, that's wow.